Hello, my name's Tom Walker. Welcome to That'll Be the Day. After a dry January where my podcasts have been concerned, I'm back with a fascinating conversation with a man who, in his mid-20s, was diagnosed with the eye condition choroideremia. But before we hear about Gary O'Connor's 34-year career in the City of London and how his eye condition affected him, if you like the music at the start of this podcast, it's a track called That'll Be the Day by the Liverpool band The Vow. And as always, there'll be a track by The Vow at the end of this podcast. To find out which one it is, stay tuned. And let me tell you, it's a belter. Now, when you're working with large amounts of money, you've got to be on the ball. One slip-up could result in significant losses. But at the age of 26, Gary O'Connor was diagnosed with choroideremia, which is similar to retinitis pigmentosa. Concerned that the diagnosis would have a detrimental impact on his career, for a long time, Gary stayed stum. His career continued to progress, and now retired on Hayling Island off the south coast of England, Gary is indulging his passion for music. When I spoke to him on Zoom a few days ago, I started by asking Gary about his career.
I started off in operations and monitoring basically commercial loans for large corporates, and then you move into the, as I started off working for an American bank, and then the idea was to get onto the platform. So what you wanted to be then was to be a lending officer. So you'd go around and visit all the large company and try and persuade them to take money off of you. So that was the idea. But to get there, you had to understand how a corporate operated. You have to understand, obviously, accounts. You have to understand credit. You have to, how to base a lending decision on the financial standing of the company. And you have to understand the legal context of the company and how it might affect any agreement you come into. So you have to do quite a bit of law as well. So, and then what you've got to be able to do as well is to, basically get off your, can I say arse? I don't know. Anyhow. Oh, sorry. You have to get out on the road and get on the telephone, and you have to be, basically do your sales and marketing at the same time as well.
And since you finished work, you've been focusing on your music, haven't you?
I have indeed. Yeah, it's basically become, music for many people, of course, is a huge passion, and it's become more of a huge passion for me. So yes, it envelops my whole life just about. So from the time I get up to the last thing I do when I go to sleep, before I go to sleep at night. So which is not, I'm not completely obsessed by it, but it's it's just fascinating.
Well, hopefully we'll hear a bit of your music in a little bit later on in this podcast, and we'll talk about your music in I don't want to be too grand, but what we'll call part two of this podcast.
Oh, part two, yeah. Well, yeah. We'll give everybody a warning first in case they need to go to make a cup of tea while the music's on. So
we will indeed. Now, one of the things that interested me about you, Gary, is that you have the eye condition choroideremia, which is similar, as far as I understand it, to retinitis pigmentosa. What are the practical effects it has on your eyesight and your life?
Well, of course, it's a progressive degenerative disease of the retina, so it's been a history of changes, really. So it's been constantly adjusting to the how your eyesight deteriorate, and adjusting your lifestyle and your life pattern accordingly to ensure you can function reasonably well as you can within the constraints that you have. So that's been the struggle, if you like, really. Well, now all I can see is basically light and shade. I can't see any detail, and none of it's not like just might be a bright light, but I can't see anything around it. I can't see faces, or I can't see the TV. I can't. Well, bit by bit, more recently, I had to stop. Well, not had to stop. I used to be able to read the text, actually, specifically on Facebook Messenger. I could just about make out the text with the various adjustments on the iPhone, and but that stopped I think halfway through last year. So I've started to use this voiceover thing a bit more on the Apple, which I think it seems to work quite well on my iPhone, but my son put it on the Apple Mac for me, and I've I found that very frustrating. I've turned it off because it's too frustrating.
And I can understand that. Am I right in saying as well, Gary, you used to be able to drive?
Oh yeah, so yeah, I did. Yeah, actually, to be honest, I mean, I was diagnosed when I was 26. I think, yeah, 26, and I was obviously driving at the point, and it was a bit of a surprise being diagnosed, which maybe is another thing we can go on to. Yeah, so I did, and I think Professor Bird, who was then the main man at Moorfields on the genetic eye disease side, it was so much less sophisticated than it is now. But basically, he suggested that it might not be a good idea to drive, and unfortunately, I did continue to drive for a few more years, which, I know I shouldn't have done, and I do regret doing that. But I did drive for a few more years. But I guess I thought everything I could see, at that point, I thought I could see fine. But of course, what you don't realise that these bits missing. So, yeah. But I touch wood, and lucky enough, didn't have any accidents, and, there you go.
You were diagnosed at the age of 26. What caused you to go and get checked out? Were there incidents that happened before then?
What happened, in actual fact, was my mother was sort of diagnosed before I was. Now, in the disease, the choroideremia, I think it's called female regressive. So basically, my mother should be a carrier. One time, I was working on a computer system. We were inputting. It was called International Banking System, and we even used to use Wang processing machines. I think, I don't know, Wang, and it was the first sort of, like, in some ways, communication tool, and using emails or sort of thing, and word processing online. And anyhow, the point is, I suddenly realised when I put one hand over one eye and one over there was movement, and I thought it's a bit odd. And then the thing came through at work, and it said, if you are at the screen a bit more, and I think then, don't forget as well, I think the screens were like this green and black thing, it wasn't as they are now. And they said you could get, go and get an eye test. So I thought, well, I might as well just go get an eye test, and that's what kicked it off. I think the optician looked at it and said, "Oh, I think you need to go to Moorfields." And I says, "Where's that?" Of course, in the city, it's not far. When you're in the city of London, it's not far from, the city, and it's just one tube ride. And so anyhow, so I did, and I went in as an outpatient, and and that next thing I know, yeah, it was a bit traumatic, I think.
You've used the word there, traumatic. When
Yeah.
you left that appointment with Professor Bird,
Yeah.
how were you feeling? What was going through your mind?
Well, it was a bit of a shock to be told that, by the time you get to 55, you're going to be blind. And so for many years, it was like, I felt like I had the sword of Damocles over my head. And there was no counselling, no help. And
there was no counselling for you.
No.
I mean, obviously, I'm guessing you assumed there should have been.
Yeah, I was sort of like left. No, nobody came, nobody followed up. And I suppose you think, well, how do you cope? And particularly with the family. Well, actually, then we didn't. The daughter was born in '87, so it was a couple of, we had a year later. But how do you cope then with your career? And so I thought, in some degree, we thought, well, the best thing to do is to ignore it in some ways. I
mean, was it occupying a lot of your waking thoughts there?
Yeah.
Or did you have days when actually you just didn't even think about it at all?
I don't think I did. It was always there. It was always there, and it was always. I think for a while I was very annoyed by it, and but it was every day, to think about it.
And as well as carrying on driving, you continued to work.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying, Gary, you didn't disclose your diagnosis to your employer?
No, I never did know, and because I thought it would be the end of my career, So, and I did want to do quite well in my career, and I think I did reasonably well in the end. I think really as well. But I think if I'd have said, what was this eye condition, I don't, working with figures and screens, and you can get things wrong, particularly latterly in my career. Actually, it was more important because I could latterly in my career, I headed up a trading team, where. My groups, my teams, the trading limit we had, I think I could have committed just under €1 billion, So it wasn't the sort of thing maybe like in a stock exchange where you could press a number and get something wrong, and all of a sudden it wouldn't have been that immediate, but it could have I could have got a price wrong and been committed to exchange on a price, potentially. So so I used to, be very, very careful what I did, until it got to the point where I thought, well, I think I did then. It was only in the last bank, so I worked for 6 banks, and it was only the last bank, which is a German bank called Westdeutsche Landesbank, and they were very good actually. When I came out, and so then we got the RNIB came in and did a report on me, and the bank put some specialist software actually from Germany as well. So I used to have this, because I couldn't see the cursor, of course, and all that sort of thing. And actually, I had to say what it was like. I had like 5 screens in front of me, with all different things. So I had to move around these screens, and I don't know. I did it, to be honest, now. But anyhow, but what they did, the manager, I don't know I can't remember what it was called, this software, but it was, whenever the cursor moved, a great big cross across each moved with it. So it was almost like a firing thing that you get on a submarine. So I'd know where the cursor was. And if I knew where the cursor was, then I might have had half a chance of seeing something. And I could still read. I used to read lots of research, corporate research, market research, lots of research. And I could still sort of read then with, I used to have like a magnifier that used to help quite a bit. One of these line magnifiers that I just bring down like on a ruler thing, and that used to help. So I think I was quite lucky. I did have a slow progression with the disease, and I could be reasonably effective for quite a while.
In the earlier part of your career, do you think, had you disclosed it, do you think that would have been the end, effectively, of your work?
Oh, undoubtedly. Oh, yeah, definitely, yeah. Because you are under a lot of pressure. I mean, some of the jobs you move to, you get headhunted, or you to move to. I mean, I think I should remember it, but it was 6 banks. And, when you got to have your medical, and, on this medical you have before you joined, and you're at this age where you haven't put your notice in, but you've got to pass the medical before you put your notice in and everything. And, you'd be waiting for them. Everybody else says, oh, there's nothing, not a problem. I'm thinking, yes, there is for me. If they find about my eyes, I'm stuffed here, sort of thing. And so I would be, I never used to say that to anybody. Well, I never used to say that to anybody apart from my missus, because I didn't want anybody else to know. So that would be the thing, waiting for this medical and to making sure you pass the medical. And that used to stress me out. But there was a lot of money riding on that medical, particularly that last medical, and I can still remember the lady, the lady doctor who looked at me, she says, oh yeah, you're fit as a Phil, do you play rugby? And I says, well, not really, And I was, and then I think she couldn't, I think she was quite surprised, probably see the back of my retina. I think she didn't understand why it was all probably white at the back of my eye. So she thought that the torch on whatever it is, a thalmoscope, whatever it is she looks through with, and she thought that was broken. She says, oh yeah, that's fine, yeah, you're good to go, sort of thing. But whoa.
It must have been quite stressful trying to make sure that your colleagues didn't realise that you had a visual impairment, especially when you stopped driving. What lengths did you go to make sure they didn't find out that their colleague effectively was going to lose his sight? Because, as you say, that could have been quite catastrophic for your career.
Yeah, I did. I used to do all sorts of different things, and things like I didn't used to I traveling by myself, and I'd get the train if I was going anywhere, sort of thing. Sometimes Fiona would take me somewhere and drop me off. So there was all sorts of different techniques that I'd use to kind of obfuscate the fact that and people used to kind of go to sometimes to race days, and kind of corporate entertainment. You'd go and race cars, and I'd sort of I might say I was going, and last minute I'd say, oh, I'm not very well, and can you send my my number 2 will go instead, sort of thing. So I used to do those sort of things. So if I was in a situation, I'd sometimes, unfortunately, I used to feign illness or or work commitments that I couldn't get out of, so I couldn't go or do things.
As a visually impaired person, I've had to do that. Before I used to carry a white cane. I would go around the place, and people, or some people at least, would have no clue that I had a very serious visual impairment. So I entirely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. That was the thing as well for us, that we used to go to corporate, some I think we used to go to some corporate entertainment events, and this, I've again written a song about this sort of, but the sort of thing when you're in a bar or something and you keep bumping into walls and tables and everything, and everybody thinks you're blottoed, you know.
I hope you don't mind me mentioning this, Gary, but I'm aware of an event you went to. I think it was a drinks reception or something.
Oh, yeah.
And did you not knock a lady's arm 3 times, obviously by accident? Tell us about that.
I did. The lovely Mary, yeah, from Bank of Ireland, yeah. So, you know, she was a lovely lady and everything. We were there, and I think it was a reception at NatWest in Gibson Hall. I can still remember it. I lifted my arm up, and all the champagne went all over her. So she went off to the ladies, came back, stood next to me again, and I did exactly the same thing again. And then she went off, came back, and somehow I did exactly the same. I did it 3 times, and she said, Gary O'Connor, once is an accident, twice is pardonable, 3 is downright, faking it. I can say that, it's not swearing, annoying. And she stormed off. Yeah, so 3 times, you know. Eventually,
you decided to leave work. Was that because of your visual impairment?
No, well, you know, it was this financial crisis that we went through, and to be honest, in the past and the experience I've had before, you know, when there's various things that happen, you know, recessions that happen during the banking career and financial crises, that quite often banks basically shrink down, which makes you know, people get made redundant, and then as things get better again, everybody gets re-employed again. So it's a bit of a concertina sort of effect in terms of employment, and it has been in the city. In my experience, up to when I worked there.
So, Gary, you've described your sight now as being pretty poor, to be honest.
Oh yeah.
What have you learnt about yourself since you lost your sight effectively?
I think I've learned to try and be patient with myself. I'm you know, I think perhaps instinctively, I'm somebody who wants to do something yesterday, I think. So I have to stop, restrict myself from doing things which and not be frustrated with yourself. So I've learned to do that, and also then try not to be frustrated with the people who are trying to help you, because they're not doing things as quickly or when you want them to.
And one thing you can do, and we're going to raise the mood now, is music. Have you ever fancied being a DJ?
Thank you very much, Tom. This is a brand new, wonderful, amazing new single from the Gary O'Connor Band, and it's called Fun Sponge. Don't you stay home?
So that was Fun Sponge by the Gary O'Connor Band. Gary, before we talk about the band, you better tell us about the song. It's got a slightly unusual title.
Yeah, it has actually, and it's basically, somebody that I know quite well who'd been saying that somebody was joining their gatherings was coming and they were in a good mood in the pub or in the bar, and this person had come along, and then all of a sudden, life's, Marvin the Paranoid Android, and life's terrible, I'm not doing this, and so bring the mood down, dark clouds. And so she called it, they said, she's a complete fun sponge and a mood hoover. And so I thought, it's going to be a great thing to put in a song. And so that's what the song's about. It's about, it's about people who bring the mood down, really, at the end of the day.
Tell us about the Gary O'Connor Band more generally. What kind of music do you play?
Yeah, I guess it's probably, reasonable to say, given our age and what have you, it's probably adult-orientated rock, pop sort of thing. So, we're all influenced. We're all of the same age in the band. So we're just getting to the point now where we're ready to do a full set again. So we've got our first gig with a new lineup on the 18th of February. It's only a small one with 4 other bands at the it's actually on the island at the Royal British Legion, which is quite a big hall actually. So we're working with a local promoter on that. So
so for you as a visually impaired person, as the lead singer, you are the main focus of the band. Everybody's eyes will be on you. How do you cope with that as a blind person?
Well, I'm very conscious to begin with that, I don't want to make an idiot of myself and start jigging around too much, but I sort of like try to move around. I do try to engage people by talking, and I just hope that they're listening. I can't see the look on people's faces, of course, if I'm saying something which is ridiculous or people don't like. So, which is, could be a saving grace as well. Same with the music. I can't see whether people are enjoying it or not, really. And it's only sometimes after we've done a gig whether I know anybody's dancing or anything like that. So I have no idea. And another thing is, like, if we're going to start a song, sometimes I'm going, I don't know whether we're ready or not.
Do you have a little pre-arranged signal before each gig?
We've developed one now, yeah.
Nothing untoward has happened to you while you've been gigging, I'm hoping.
I've always been worried about falling off the stage. Yes.
I imagine.
I like to know where the microphone is. Because, if I lose a microphone, again, I'm a bit stuffed, And then I look, because typically people might not know, again, in the audience, that, I have a visual impairment. So, again, I could be looking like a complete idiot, kind of sway my arms around trying to find the microphone, That's the other thing. Hold on to the microphone, so at least I know where the bloody thing is,
Do you tell the audience that you're visually impaired?
No, I don't. No. I might have done sometimes, but I don't make it. I try not to make a deal about it. If people want to tell or ask, they can do. But I mean, I don't hide it. But I don't want to go. I don't want to say this is a Gary O'Connor band and I'm blind. I just to let you know in case I do anything stupid. But it's not my fault. I'm blind. I'm quiet. I don't want to do that. We've got the new album coming out, which is called Blinding Light. So actually, it's my 5th album.
Well, look, Gary, it's been great to talk to you. You are, in fact, the first guest on my That'll Be the Day podcast for 2022. I know you said it's a Gary O'Connor honour to be on. So
that's going to be a lyric. That's going to be.
I think it has to be. Look, Gary, you've also spoken very openly about some very challenging issues, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we've already heard Fun Sponge by the Gary O'Connor Band. Now to a track by The Vow, and as I said earlier, it really is a belter. This one is January Moves in Me.
All right, so winter paints my face matte white. The times I've longed to erase that season of doubt, frozen in or frozen out. January moves in me. Who permits the time to crawl? I can see no end to it all. My friends fade away like the stars from the day. January moves in me. We'll rise into summer, roll back to the fall, where hope springs eternal and love conquers all. Your hopes fade away like the stars from the day. January moves in me. Old friend, you won't come out to play, to transcend the breath of deadly decay. Your schizo face pouts as your cracked lips cry out. January moon.